We're going to get started now. My name is Robert Ingenito. I'm the Public Information Officer. I'm the guy who you hear whenever we do robocalls for the village. This is the face that goes with that voice. Just a couple of household things that I want to mention. We're recording this meeting, and it's going to be broadcast later on LMC. So in order for your voice to be heard, it's important that you speak into a microphone. So just be aware, we have this handheld one, and we also have one over there by Sam. Everyone say hi to Sam. And we also have an interpreter in the conference room back there, and the whole meeting is also going to be recorded into Spanish as well. So that's a nice little perk that we're doing today. Special thanks to Gerandi and the CRC, and to Kevin, who's in the back room, for doing our interpreting services. So without further ado, let me introduce Leilani Yizer-Reed, who is one of the village's trustees, and also the trustee liaison to the Traffic Commission, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's my title in many forms. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here. As Robert did say, I am one of the trustees, one of the 4 trustees, and then there is Mayor Torres, and we have Trustee Lucas in the back, so thank you. Thank you for being here. Oh, I saw Manny earlier, but I think he's stepped outside. And Manny Rawlings is here, Trustee Rawlings, sorry. Again, thank you so much for being here. We adopted Vision Zero, the village adopted Vision Zero in 2019, and then it kind of sat on display, if you say sat on display, while there were little things that the village was doing to mediate any type of pedestrian safety or do things regarding improving our traffic safety. But then when I became the liaison, when I got on the board, I really started looking at Vision Zero in its totality of what it is and what it could be for us as a village, because other municipalities have adopted it, had started implementing a lot of their initiatives, and it actually worked. Shannon Hughes, who is a representative from the DOT, she will speak later as to what exactly Vision Zero is, but I'll give you a synopsis of what I believe it is. Which is what it is, but to me, why I wanted to resurrect it is because it gave a holistic view of how we can improve our whole entire village, and not just little bits and pieces, not just a sidewalk here or a street there. It's looking at our village as a whole. And one of the reasons why I really wanted to do it is because when we think about our own individual streets that we live on, are the ones that we frequent the most, we just think about that. We're not thinking about the next person. We're not thinking about the next street because we're just solely worried about our daily walks, daily drives, daily whatever. And it's not the next person, or it's not the next thing. So this allows us, today is going to allow us to look at the whole village, start to really look at the whole village as to what we want. This is the first and hopefully of many that the village will continue, or forms that we can continue to have, but it's acknowledging us as a whole, not partly by the streets that we live on and the streets that we visit, but as a whole, seeing each other, seeing ourselves when we're walking, when we're biking, when we're driving, when we're just passing by each other. Like, do you often see me? How often do you see me? Do you recognize me? Not just because I'm a trustee, but because I'm a human being. And we often make mistakes, right? And it's not to shame and blame anybody. It's not to sit there and point fingers, but it's to acknowledge our daily doings while being very mindful of the next person with us in this community. So, any questions? Any questions? All right. So I want you to, because I usually, when I'm facilitating any type of group, I try to start off with a very mindful moment. And in those mindful moments, it's really taking time, a special moment, to acknowledge yourself in this space and in this time. Acknowledging that you are here, you're willing to participate in community work, not individual work, but community work, and to acknowledge yourself in what do you look like when you're a driver? What do you look like when you're a walker? And for those of us who do bike, what do you look when you bike? What do you look like, or when you're running? What do you look like, and what do you want somebody else to see? So I will pose that question to any person who wants to answer, but what do you look like? I think I will start, since we're struggling. What I look like when I'm walking, what I imagine what I look like, is that my walk it's relaxed. It's relaxed because most of the time I'm listening to music, and I'm happy, and I'm feeling good about my body being able to walk and take me to different places, because that's not an ability that everybody has. So that's what I'm grateful for. When I'm driving, it's a different thing. When I'm driving, sometimes I'm thinking selfishly, sometimes I'm just thinking about getting to my destination. But then there's other times when I'm paying attention and I'm being mindful of everything around me, and not just people, but land too. So, anybody want to go? Because we're going to talk today, so might as well get ready.
Group discussion.
I'll go. Go ahead.
When I'm walking, When I'm walking, I'm usually listening to a book. So I'm somewhat engrossed in the story, so I have to be mindful of my surroundings and traffic, and when I'm crossing, I have to get out of the book and make sure I'm paying attention to what I'm doing, because it's easy for me not to do that. When I'm driving, I'm usually focused on where I'm going, but I'm also trying to figure out, well, what's the best route? Where's the least amount of traffic? Should I take the avenue or not? Those kinds of things are always going through my head, too.
Thank you for sharing. Anybody else?
I'm Lindsay Reitzis. I'm a Rhineck parent. And as a pedestrian, I actually feel like I'm always on high alert. And, I have kids, and I'm constantly looking in every direction. As a biker along the Boston Post Road, I find that I try to be create almost like a bear effective. I am as big as possibly can. I try to hold my ground on the road, more to actually for the sake of other people, kind of representing bikers on the road and trying to make it cars aware that bikers are there. And as a driver, I've actually, I think, swung the pendulum. When I first moved here, I've always been a slow driver, and the speed on the Boston Post Road turned me into I was trying to keep up with the speed of the Boston Post Road. And I find that in the last few weeks, I am now incredibly conscious of every turn that I take, and I look everywhere before turning. And I'm conscious of how everyone is driving around me now. So it's like a completely different experience as a driver now in this village.
Hi, I'm Lisa Urban with Assemblyman Steve Otis's office. As a walker, I walk a lot with my dog. He's a 90-pound lab, and around where we live, it's near a high school, and I must say the kids really do drive very fast around the high school, but I find when I walk with him, I have to be, again, I'm happy, I'm relaxed, and but I'm also, again, on edge and always looking out for, some car coming around a corner or something, especially if we're in the neighborhood. neighborhood around the high school or whatever. But and as a driver, it's funny. I recently had some major work on my car, and it really got me upset that I said, I'm driving this car way too fast, probably going to different places, figuring out what's the best route, and I decided that, this isn't good. So over the last month or so, I have just noticed a lowering the temperature of how I drive much more slowly, and being aware of obviously pedestrians and bikers and whatever. So, and then I unfortunately, I'm not a biker. I'm not like that. But anyway, I don't know if anyone. Denise?
We'll take maybe two more.
Hi, Denise Wooden. I'm with the YMCA, and we've done a lot of pedestrian safety work and cyclist safety in our service area, which includes Mamaroneck. But I'm also a resident here, and really I'm here as a concerned resident. And I've always been very concerned about pedestrian and cyclist safety, but even more so as my young adult daughter in the past couple of years has become passionate about cycling, and she bikes everywhere. And in this area, it's turning my hair gray because it just doesn't feel very safe for her, and she doesn't feel very safe in this area. And I moved here 2.5 years ago from Dobbs Ferry, and they've done a lot of work around pedestrian and cyclist safety, and they did a pace car campaign, and so I had a magnet on the back of my car that said, I'm a Dobbs Ferry pace car, which basically means that you try, not that other people need to follow it, but to set the pace by obeying all traffic rules, including speed limits. And I think that really helped me because, when I was tending to speed up, maybe on local roads, I would remember, I have a pace car, magnet that I'm proclaiming that I'm, setting the example, so I need to set the example. And so that's kind of become ingrained in me. Not that I don't speed like everyone else on 287 or places like that, but I really try to not do it on local roads. And like Lindsay, is it? I've, in the past, unfortunately, several weeks, I've become really hyper conscious of every move I make on the road.
Anybody else who would like to express? Okay. So I'm going to get started with Shannon's going to really dive into Vision Zero and what it is. We also have Elaine Dew, and she's from AKRF. She is one of our village engineers when it comes down to traffic safety, and also a brilliant mind who has done and helped with a lot of our walk studies and provides a lot of insight, as well as Shannon. And Shannon also is a past traffic liaison chairperson. And I'm sorry if I was remiss, but we do have our traffic liaison, Ryan Buck. Not liaison, chairperson. I'm the liaison. We had Ryan Buck, who is our chairperson here. And a traffic member, which is Robert Stark. So let's move forward. And if you would like to bagels, coffee, juice, it was supplied by us by Brooklyn Bagel. So we're very grateful for them to supply the food. So come on down.
Appreciate you.
Appreciate you.
Good morning, everyone. And I want to take a first opportunity. I love the question that Leilani kind of broke the ice with. And this really, I promise, is the last of the formal presentation piece of this meeting today, all right? We're not going to bore you with the Fed in the room who's going to throw all kinds of data at you and make you go So it really is intended to be a community meeting. But I moved to White Plains from Mamaroneck in February 2021. I have the blessing of being able to walk to work. I, too, have a dog. So a lot of my time walking White Plains with my pup are times where I'm either walking briskly because I got somewhere to go, or walking briskly because she needs to run. But they're happy times because I'm outside. Even on a hot or a cold day, I like to be outside. I frankly find myself, when I'm driving behind the wheel, feeling very isolated because you're suddenly in this bubble where, as Leilani said, your priorities are number one, right? So yes, I absolutely take care to drive more cautiously and safely, especially because of the business I'm in. I know post-COVID the numbers in terms of excessive speed crashes, things like that, so I'm always hyper aware. But it makes me feel separate from people. And I think that's an important takeaway today, because one of the beautiful things about the Village of Mamaroneck is that the way that it is designed and planned and laid out is that it is cozy and crowded and clustered, making it very uncomfortable, or it should be very uncomfortable, for cars to travel at high speeds. And that's part of what Vision Zero is all about. So, where did Elaine go? There.
I got it.
Leilani/Elaine, if you haven't gotten a copy of it yet, there's a copy of a resolution that the Village of Mamaroneck adopted Vision Zero in 2019. I'd love for everybody here to have a copy, just so we're all on the same page. And with that,
I can pass it out if that.
oh, thank you, Leilani.
I'm doing two things. Go ahead, next one.
Nope,
Okay.
we're still here. Vision Zero was actually born in Sweden. Good things come out of Europe, we know. And New York City was the first city in the country to adopt it. As we'll learn through the next couple slides, it's a visionary kind of thing. But just like you put your glass under the tap and get water and drink from it, just like you go to the grocery store and purchase food and prepare it, you should not expect to die from walking down the road. You should not expect to die riding your bicycle or driving your car. What Vision Zero really gets to is that human life is precious, and that our ability to move freely, safely, accessibly, regardless of what our physical abilities are, is a right. Mobility is a right. And so it really does get down to justice as well. We'll walk through the fundamental tenets of what the initiative is all about, talk a little bit about what we hope to rejuvenate with the Vision Zero task force that Leilani mentioned, and get you guys involved in next steps and how we can help move this forward. Next slide, please.
I'm right there.
So this is kind of old data. I apologize for that. I actually helped put this together when I was on the Traffic Commission back in 2019. But not much has changed, and I think our rep from the PD will acknowledge this in terms of the crash trends in the village. The good thing about crash data is that it takes a long time to change. And why? Well, because think about the things that need to change in the environment in order to reduce crashes, right? So over this 3-year span of 2016 to 2018, there were 1,690 collisions, crashes in Mamaroneck. Quick aside, by the way, how many of you use the term accident? Raise your hand. Okay.
I've stopped using that term.
Thank you, Robert. We're going
After
to
you.
get rid of that word today. We're going to make that a dirty word, because an accident means that there was no culpability. It was nobody's fault. It was an act of God, right? An accident means nothing could have been done to prevent it. But what I'm here to sell you today is that Vision Zero will help identify ways that we can prevent crashes, collisions, crash violence. Okay.
What defines a crash?
A car colliding with something. Yep. Whether it's another vehicle, a person, a house, a bicyclist. Right. So, right. Mamaroneck experienced, on average, about 1.5 crashes every day, with the greatest number of them happening in the nice weather, May through July, and in November, when daylight hours are most limited. Next slide. Luckily, most of the crashes are what we call PDO, or property damage only crashes, right? Reducing all car crashes is a really, really lofty and perhaps unattainable goal. What we're most interested in is reducing those crashes that cause serious injury and death, right? So, again, only 6% of the total number of crashes involved hitting a pedestrian. But now look at the number of injuries, right? You are fundamentally far more safe inside a vehicle than you are outside of it. Car versus pedestrian, sorry, pedestrian always is going to lose. So while only 6% of those crashes involved people who were struck by a car, Those accounted for 34% of the crash-related injuries. Next slide. We saw over this older span of time, and I predict that things have probably changed a little bit post-COVID, because we know that dangerous driving behavior has been on the uptick since the pandemic. Total injuries decreased by 31%, but those crashes involving pedestrians being struck increased by 38%. So I won't go into the more detailed numbers, but basically, more often than not, the more serious crashes are involving people outside the car. Next slide. One of the walking safety assessments that Leilani mentioned, and we have a copy of each of the reports over here, just in case when we get into group discussion work, you guys are curious. What did they discover about MAS, for instance, or about Old Post Road? One of the wonderful things that we got was participation from the principal to allow us to survey the parents and families, just to identify simple things. How far do you live from the school? And how do you get your child to school? And why do you make that choice? So we found almost all, like 98% of families whose children attended MAS live less than a mile from the school. And for our Safe Routes to School folks in the audience, what you'll know then, or what you can say with certainty, is walking is an option. If you live less than a mile from the school, walking or biking is a viable option, right? 73% chose to drive their children to school. I know busing is a very sensitive topic. I'm not here to talk about that, but that's huge, right? And when we then asked why, well, because of safety. I don't feel safe walking my child to school. The irony being, the more cars that are introduced to the roadway environment, the less safe it becomes for kids who are outside the car, right? Next slide. Vision Zero also gets to access, and not just access in terms of, when we talk about access at the federal level, we tend to think of like the Americans for Disabilities Act, right? Making sure that people who don't have the same physical mobility that I do can get around, and that's absolutely a part of it. But access is also accessing all the things in society that help keep us happy, safe, and successful. Green spaces, parks, right? The ability to get to doctors, medicine, the ability to get to a grocery store that has good food. So while we might be thinking very, very narrowly about traffic safety concerns, transportation touches everything. Affordable housing that puts people in neighborhoods where they can access the things that they need to keep them safe and well. So Vision Zero touches on a lot of that as well. And, again, at the national level, we know that communities who have been historically marginalized, those who have been disproportionately impacted by systemic racism, tend to be those communities where they have the least access. They have less sidewalks, poor quality parks, or no parks at all, et cetera, et cetera. Dangerous conditions. Next slide. So, again, what word are we going to get rid of?
Accident.
Yeah, there's no more accidents. Your child had an accident in their diaper. That's it. That's it. Deaths and injuries caused by traffic crashes are preventable. The father of the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration was a doctor out of West Orange, New Jersey, who figured this out back in the early 70s and did a really cool Haddon matrix map that I'm not going to talk about at length right now. But basically, there's so many points where we can prevent a crash. We can better engineer the roadways. We can better design cars. And we've done a lot of that, right? So we didn't used to have airbags. We didn't used to have seat belts that had 3 points. For those of us that can remember, did you get buckled up in the back seat of your family's station wagon? Ooh. I remember my father driving with a can of beer in his lap, toasting the officer on the corner, So yeah, there's lots and lots of ways that we can prevent crashes. Next slide. Again, human life, health, equity, access are prioritized within all aspects of transportation systems. That means that just because I'm driving doesn't make me more important than the person waiting for the bus at the transit stop. or just because I'm in a hurry to get to my next appointment doesn't mean I should swerve around that pedestrian who had the right of way in the crosswalk. We're all important. We're all people. Next slide. Leilani mentioned it. We're all people, so we all make mistakes. I want a show of hands for anyone who has never exceeded the speed limit.
I'm sorry, never.
Never exceeded the speed limit. How many of you have never touched your cell phone behind the wheel? To answer a call, to pick up a text. Never touched your cell phone behind the wheel. Elaine. How many of you have never, ever forgotten to buckle up or just said, it's a half a mile? Okay, we've got some safety champs back here. You get my point. We're all human. We all make mistakes. I've had speeding tickets. I will admit that. I remember when I first got hired for this job, I was following my boss, he was following me in his car to a meeting that we both met at. And I was terrified because I'm like, oh my God, now I work for NHTSA. So I went the speed limit, and he yelled at me. He said, why are we going so slow on the Palisades, Because it's 55. But yeah, we all make mistakes. It's inevitable. But the systems that we move within should accommodate for those mistakes. Okay, next slide. We, again, as Leilani mentioned, we're not here to replace one sidewalk or put in one pedestrian system. We want to look at a system. And so a system-level approach to safety focuses getting the policymakers and those who have the power to make these changes understand that the community demands this. Again, you demand safe, clean water, right? You demand food that you're okay eating. So too should the policymakers and decision makers and those who have the resources to make these changes should be in lockstep with that for transportation.
Next slide.
Next slide.
Okay.
This is awesome because after the village adopted, or right around the time Mamaroneck adopted the Vision Zero resolution, then Mayor Murphy really pushed and did his homework and figured out that Albany would allow him to change local roadway speed limits to no more than 25 miles per hour. We can't do that yet on things that are owned by the county or the state, but what we know is if you're hit by a car as a pedestrian at 25, you got about a 90% chance of living. If you're hit by a car as a pedestrian at 40 miles per hour, 10% chance. And if you're a child, not like you, but a child, somebody who's mobility impaired, somebody who's got, visual impairment or something like that, your chances are pretty much zero. So reducing speed is fundamental to the severity of the crashes and the severity of the injuries and the death that might occur. Next slide. So where do we go from here? Instead of listening to more boring PowerPoint stuff, the village needs to take advantage of the tools that it has in hand. We don't have to sit here today and come up with clever new solutions, right? We've got a resolution. We've accomplished several really good walk safety assessments. And to the absolutely horrific and preventable tragedy that happened on Mamaroneck Avenue in front of the school, that wasn't the first. We know that Noe Duran was killed right several yards away from that same spot on Mamaroneck Avenue. Sure, different circumstances, same road. So we don't have to come up with new ideas. We've got them. But what we need is action. And so, yes, ma'am.
One of our local I could also just say that one of our local residents, a longtime resident who is in a wheelchair, was also hit. He wasn't killed, but he is now struggling with life quality issues because of that on Mamaroneck Avenue.
Thank you for that, Gerandi. No, that's unacceptable. So how do we make change? We get mad, but we get mad in a smart way. And so luckily, we have the chair of the Traffic Commission here. We have, again, folks from policy-making level. We have folks from the departments who can help get involved in a task force. What a Vision Zero task force can do is build that holistic, system-wide action plan that looks at the data and in a thoughtful way prioritizes which corridors and roadways are the most dangerous. And heads up, we're going to break you all into some discussion groups in a few minutes so we can explore this together as well. Should definitely involve your village engineer, your planning department, your enforcement, EMS, folks from the media, because big transparency and continual feedback to the larger community is important. And what's essential, again, is that we've got full-throated leadership of this. You know, it's phenomenal that 3 of the 4 trustees are here today. That's such a wonderful, wonderful boon. Let's make sure the entire village leadership team is in on this, right? Next slide. And so, yep, next steps, big deep data dive, make sure that we understand which are the corridors most risky to everybody who's using them. Those walk safety assessments that I mentioned are really neat because they kind of gather those key members of the task force, link them with residents who live along those corridors, and in a very systemic way do observational surveys. You go for a walk with a highly reflective vest. It's fun. And, you know, Leilani mentioned it earlier, like, we need to see this as one community. Not just I live in Orienta, or I live in Harbor Heights, or I live in Washingtonville, and that's all I care about. But I care about the whole thing. And so inclusivity is a really, really important aspect. Yes, sir.
I don't want to interrupt your great program. I just wondered, as you were going down the current list, do we measure the volume of traffic on major arteries? And I mean, is that public information, or where do we find that?
Would you like to speak to this? No? Okay. Yes is the answer. How frequently and systemically it's done depends on the roadway who has jurisdiction. For example, on a state DOT road, I think, what would you say, once a year?
Every 2 years?
Once every 2 years. County roads might have their own metrics, but the easiest answer to your question is if the Vision Zero task force decided volume was an important thing to measure, it can be done.
I'm sorry.
It can be done.
Yeah.
It can be done. It's not hard. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. With that, any other questions before we get rid of the PowerPoint part? All right.
No next slide? Okay.
No next slide. So what we're going to do now, I know I kind of put you in semicircles so that everybody could see. If you wouldn't mind closing your circles, and for the 2 of you, maybe you want to join another. Oh, I'm sorry, you have another question?
Are there points at which we're going to be answering these questions aloud to everyone as opposed to just within the breakout? I just wanted to know at what point in the presentation we'll be able to speak to the group.
Thank you for that. Yep, I was just about to say. We're going to have a few little breakout circles, right? Because it helps people to kind of share in smaller groups more freely. We're going to give out some discussion prompts that, you know, will hopefully inspire everybody to, you know, direct their thoughts and you know, invest a little bit of critical thinking in how you would like to see changes engendered. And then maybe after about 20 minutes of that or so, if you don't mind in each of your groups identifying a spokesperson, we'll go around and ask them to just kind of summarize what some of the key discoveries were. So copies of the discussion points are coming right now. And again, this is participative. Please let us know how we can help. Okay, let's start with who wants to volunteer to go first? Hopefully you elected a spokesperson from your team. Please keep comfortable in your own groups. You don't have to move. If nobody wants to go first, I'm going to make somebody go. All right, let's go.
All right. So, I didn't introduce myself earlier. I'm Catherine Lapone. I live behind Equinox and that off of Old Post Road. I'm also on the board of LMC Media, but I'm here as a private individual. So number one, How are we going to get the word out? We talked about LMC is filming today, so we have to make sure that that link to that video gets out. You know, they'll put it in their newsletter, but we could also be sharing it all on our own social media pages and moms and dads groups that we belong to. We need to put the link to that video everywhere we can think of. Law enforcement administration does talk to each other, so if they could share with the other municipalities around us what the vision is for what we're doing, that would be great. CRC has offered to put it out to their community. PTSA, school district, you know, making sure that it's in their newsletter, and the local summit will definitely be doing something about this. The second question, which was, how do you most easily see your neighbors when you're driving, walking, and riding? Do you want us to do all the questions? Okay. Clearly lighting, but personal lighting. You know, there are many people that walk in dark clothes, no reflective gear, no reflective shoes, so personal lighting, educating people, wearing bright colors, making eye contact. When you make eye contact with, you're crossing the street and there's a driver, make sure you make eye contact with that person before you proceed, and vice versa. Number 3, the roadways. If you had the power to control the village's resources and investment, where would you make changes first? We ended up talking a lot about the curve on Mamaroneck Avenue after you pass under the railroad track and you start turning right toward 95. How treacherous that is, but we can't control that. But we did talk about some ideas of maybe some striping, maybe some ways to discourage people from double parking there, and encouraging people to keep moving. So we focused on things the village could do, which is the side roads near schools, you know, speed humps and things like that, striping and things along that line. In terms of number 4, how is the village doing? Great with the tools that they have, and great with what's available, considering we have to work with other governments like the state and the county. What can we do? Even small things that we could make changes ourselves. Hold each other accountable, have more patience. And that means, you know, with the other drivers on the road, maybe they're learning, maybe they're older, maybe they're lost. Let's take it down a notch and be more patient. And look left, right, and left again, because that's something now with right-on reds in certain areas of around the schools. Maybe we've forgotten that we have to look both ways now, because people are coming from both directions.
Fantastic. Well done, Group 1. All right, volunteers, who wants to go next? All right, Mike, thank you.
Hey, guys. So we had some of the same discussion, so I won't repeat. On question 1, I think one thing we talked a lot about is at the schools, communicating with parents, communicating with PTA, letting parents know, hey, the car you're driving might not have great visibility to see little kids walking in front of it. Be patient. Also talking about ways to get parents more involved in surfacing issues, because I know that's a big part of Safe Routes to School, but I don't think a lot of parents, if they know something's dangerous, they don't have a first place to go. And I think Safe Routes or the schools is a good place to do that and sort of surface a lot of the concerns that can then be addressed by the municipalities. A lot of talk of drop-off and pick-up for obvious reasons. We took a little bit different tact on question 2, more about when do you see your neighbors when you're in driving, walking, and it's obviously walking and biking, you see your neighbors a lot. If we had to control Mamaroneck roadways, I think we ended up talking a lot about Mamaroneck Ave, which unfortunately we don't control, but in general, some little stuff we could do is getting reflectors to kids to walk around, more flashing signs, that sort of stuff, in addition to everything that was mentioned before. Do we think the village is doing a good job? I think in general, yes, proactive. I think the one place where there's room for improvement is borders with the other jurisdictions. Town of Mamaroneck, Village of Larchmont. Specific example is Hickory to Rockland came up. The town paved its section of Hickory, but the village declined because they hadn't gotten any complaints, because in the end that serves mostly Town of Mamaroneck kids who are going to the high school. And so the Village of Mamaroneck doesn't naturally get those. And so that was identified, and it's sort of how to solve that is when the walking assessment was done on that stretch in 2023, that was surfaced. And I think as we do more of this comprehensive planning, that'll help everyone, all the municipalities work together. And then finally, small ones to make roadway safer. We mentioned reflectors, walking school buses, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Nicely done, group 2. Awesome. All right, 2 groups left. Who wants to go first? Nova.
So for the first question, we thought like some things like lawn signs, bumper stickers, making tables at town events to promote Vision Zero, kind of with the goal of getting people's involvement. So maybe information about Vision Zero with sign up your email or a QR code, that kind of a thing. And also a pledge, having people sign some sort of a pledge. For the second, actually, we didn't talk about this, but I go to Great Barrington in Massachusetts, and on the ground at every crosswalk, it says, look, wave, walk. So I think like some sort of indication of what you should be doing in order to make eye contact, kind of to touch on that, would be interesting. We said Boston Post Road and Mamaroneck Avenue were the first 2 major places to make improvements. How good the village is doing. I went to the my first traffic commission meeting. You guys are so good. Thank you so much. I was really like, wow, this is an amazing group of people. So I just want to say thank you to the traffic commission. And I have heard many times residents asking for village police to be more involved, and the answer is almost always there aren't enough. Like, we don't have enough village police. I think there's 2 people in the morning, and they can't do all the schools. So possibly that's an area that we should think about adding village resources. And that's it. That's us.
Quick idea to that last one before I pass it on. City of Newark deputized traffic crossing officers. They don't have any kind of authority to make arrests or anything like that, right? But they're wearing a uniform and a brightly visible vest, and they're getting a small stipend to just help at school crossings and things like that. Newark, yep. I don't. I'll get that answer to you. But again, just that highly visible, somebody in a uniform often makes a difference.
What are they called?
They're just traffic crossing officers.
So what is the difference between, I think, province and
What's the difference between crossing guard and
crossing guard and...
Crossing guards are volunteers, right? These.
No, they pay paid.
Oh, they do get paid? Okay.
But it's almost a volunteer salary, in my opinion. They could be paid much more. They're like the heroes to me of the whole.
Right.
So traffic safety officers, and so we'll look into
Yeah, and I'll gather more from Newark to add to that. So yeah, let's let Group 4 go first before we devolve. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Awesome. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Molly. Hello. So the first question is, there should be more school activities for the parents to come in and involve for the school activities, especially out of school activities. And yeah, so there should be more school activities, in my opinion. And then the second question, just acknowledge your neighbors, because there's like sometimes there's people that like you don't acknowledge, and that's kind of like rude. But anyways, so just like acknowledge your neighbors, because like that's just respectful, guys. And like what my dad said, he said when he's walking to the train, he said hi to this guy, and he didn't say hi back, and that's just not. Yeah, but that's just, come on, this is the like chair of the traffic commission. Look at this guy. And then the third question, there should be more sidewalks, more safety sidewalks, because you know, children, pedestrians, and also more crossing guards, especially on Mamaroneck Avenue, because there's one on the far right and on the far left, but there's none in the middle. So they're where it happened. Yeah, and then yeah, there should be more cameras near the school and everywhere else, because when I see the when I go near the school, I don't see any cameras. And then more stop signs, because there are no stop signs where what's your name? Jordana, right? Yeah. Sorry. Where she lives, and honestly, the cars that where I live, Monroe Avenue, they go like so fast, and there's so many children on that street, and so many parents are like so worried because they can't have their children out anywhere. They have to have their children in the backyard, and they should, like, again, question number 2, they should acknowledge everybody around in your neighborhood. So and then yeah, so that's it.
Yeah, well, I don't know about one, but I was just going to add a little bit. Because yeah, for time. It's, anyway, our first time to kind of speak to the group. So I just would like to say that I think it's terrific. You're going to get grant funding. We're going to continue to do studies. But I would reiterate that what I've said to the town of Mamaroneck as well, which is that there are zero and low cost items that can be done and should be done immediately, such as repainting all the sidewalks, all the crosswalks, putting those signs in the middle of every crosswalk. There's only one, I think, at the Fenimore one, but putting signs in the middle of all the crosswalks. I noticed over here too, there's the yield to pedestrian signs on the sides at the crosswalk, and that seems to confuse cars, and they think it's a stop sign, which is great. Better if it were a stop sign, but so the signs on the side, and then installing more crosswalks. I don't think we need to. I think, as an outside sustainability consultant, I think consultants can be great, but I don't think we need to necessarily spend more money to find out that we need, where to put crosswalks. I think it's just put crosswalks as many places as we can. Eliminate the green lights that coincide with walk signs on the perpendicular crosswalks, so that cars are not confused. If they don't understand, you have to yield to pedestrians even when you're turning. Install way more, if not all, traffic lights to have no turn on red signs year long, regardless of time of day. Nobody respects them anyway, but I'll still take it. And then we, of course, need bike paths on as many streets as possible. I would urge them to be painted green and have the bike symbol in there that it is green as well. To install signage to cars regarding the bike lanes and signs that focus on community safety overall. For example, when you're coming off the highway, to bring it quickly to everyone's attention. You're entering a community, slow down. Like, there should be those signs all throughout the entry to Mamaroneck Avenue. And I think we need training, so like bike safety training and pedestrian safety training courses for adults and children alike to learn the rules of the road, because we can help be safer too, regardless of whether we're in a car. But then, of course, also for adult and teenage drivers to complete these kind of pedestrian cyclist safety trainings regarding driving. And the village could offer perhaps a tax discount for doing so. Encouraging schools to have all this similar trainings and studies done, like the kids could perform studies to show and where we could benefit from additional measures, community questionnaires and quizzes where results are published to demonstrate maybe the lack of knowledge of the rules of the road. All this to be, about creating a zeitgeist, changing the ethos of Mamaroneck. We were talking a lot about messaging within every newsletter, not just, okay, Vision Zero exists, but that we're trying to create a warm, friendly community where we help each other, where we care about the lives of everyone around us, any human being. And traffic is not the only danger to pedestrians and cyclists, it's also air quality, so really reinforcing by enforcing the laws against idling of gas-fired engines, changing exterior light levels so it can be safer to bike and walk at night. And then I would say, again, highlighting in every newsletter, not just Vision Zero, but this ethos of safety, of caring about each other, of slowing down, of being patient. But the enforcement aspect is really critical. So I was mentioning how the New York City Police Department will set up shop at the exit to the Manhattan Bridge for all the cyclists that exit into Chinatown and ticket car after car after car after car. You can raise funds this way. They're all, many cars are doing the wrong thing. So we can have them set up shop at key points, and it doesn't have to be this kind of level of enforcement, intense enforcement for the next 10 years, maybe only 1 or 2 years, but I think that enforcement will lead to change, behavioral change. And they could do that at any crosswalks during rush hour and identify streets that could be closed to car traffic. For example, on a Reclaim the Street Day in summer, to let people see how nice it feels to actually have no vehicles on certain streets. And then also, I know there's a lot of burden on the village to complete grant proposals or complete engineering studies that we're paying for, but we could be calling on all the strengths within our community, and people I'm sure would be willing to volunteer their efforts on that. Another simple thing, I always, my husband and I disagree, but I have my small kids biking on the sidewalks, and so really making sure, I just saw a newsletter come through the Village of Larchmont about cutting shrubs, making sure that residents are cutting their shrubs back so people can actually fit on the sidewalks and walk or bike safely if they need to. And I was also talking about how all these standards have been done, there are official standards that are published through like Well Building Standard, Well Community Standard, LEED for communities, existing cities, et cetera. And so not necessarily everything has to be looked at in every single street in every single town, because we can be using all of these established standards. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I just want to highlight the use of youth ambassadors was one brought up in Group 3 as well. We think that y'all have a really, really powerful voice. And honestly, like wherever Vision Zero goes, get involved, we'll figure it out. I want to first just thank you all again so much. Really, your thoughtful, participative nature, the way that you jumped right into this was amazing. And I know that this is just the start of some really, really important change. I'm going to turn it back over to Trustee Yizar Reed and let her make our closing remarks.
For those who were the subscribers, if I can get your paper, if it's, hopefully I can read it, but it's your handwriting's perfect. But if I can get it so that we can gather the notes to see how we can build this task force. This will be in conjunction with the traffic committee, but in its own, how can we really start promoting Vision Zero? That is the purpose of today and more meetings to come. Implementation, community, and really promoting each other as individuals within the community and as a community as a whole. So I was going to ask Ryan to come up and really maybe say a little bit about if you ever wanted to attend the traffic committee, what we have been doing, how wonderful our traffic committee members are, the volunteers that are there and present every time to push along the initiatives that we have been doing. So. just for a second.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Yeah, thank you so much. So the Traffic Commission, we're all volunteer commission. We have a lot of different viewpoints and expertise that we bring into that group. I think we are an intentionally inclusive group. Dan's come and presented on environmental topics, which overlay very nicely. Mike Smeets comes in and talks about bike lanes. Tina comes in and with safe routes. So we've tried to intentionally make a coalition, a big tent operation out of this commission. And one of the ways that we've done it is through hyper-transparency, and that is managed by Rob Stark, and he's put together this 90-page document over the last 2 years, and this is shared with everybody, and it grows and builds and changes as a living document. So we're trying to be an example of inclusivity, transparency, accountability, and action. And this tragedy that occurred is coming at a time where this is our moment to advance, to move forward and do something really big and powerful. So this coalition that we're building with Vision Zero is that this is it. We're not going to get a second chance, all right? And so we really need to do something big this time. As Mike Smeets has said, this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. So we got to do it. So thank you for being here, and send an email, reach out, call, whatever. I'm always willing to listen and learn from you. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's important. The last part you said is that we're all willing to listen and learn and to help each other. So on the village end, on the village side, we have been, just for updates, as Ryan mentioned in our group, 45, I think it's like 45 more days left until we hear back about the Safer Routes grant that we applied for. The grant comes in phases. Yes, the first part is the study phase, and then the next part, when we reapply, it will be implementation. This is to really dig deep in how we want to reimagine our community. Reimagine. If it's a once in a generation moment, let it be now. How do we want to reimagine our community with its population, with its moving? And I think one of the things we mentioned in our group now is we have streets in our community that don't have sidewalks, and for many decades prior to, the individuals who used to live there they accepted that. They were fine with it having no sidewalks. And people stay, people leave, people transition, they downsize, they do whatever. And then the new generation that comes in, they want sidewalks. They're not what the old owners, they didn't care if they had sidewalks or not. So now people want sidewalks. So it's being patient enough to have a full understanding of how our needs change by the decade and how our needs change by the moment. And doing things with grace, having full understanding that we all may be or maybe not be trying, but we're here trying to work together. Updates on Mamaroneck Avenue. I know that we will be meeting, I believe, with the county on Monday. A lot of things had to be switched around because people's schedules, but we are still pushing forward. We're very grateful for Shelley Mayer's office, representative from Shelley Mayer's office being here, and we're also very grateful for the office from Steve Otis, a representative from Steve Otis' office here, because we want to continually work together to ensure that all of our community residents have what they need. Not what they want, but what they need, and that is basic human rights and human accessibility. So, any last?
I would just say, let the memory of these people, this tragedy, not be for nothing, That, although the tragedy is totally senseless and extremely upsetting, like, let what happens here be for their memory, make it not totally meaningless. Let that change be what comes the good of this.
Yes.
I wanted to thank everyone who put this meeting together and to ask what kind of follow-up, like if we signed up and you have our email address, should we just continue to sort of pay attention, or will you be reaching out to us about how we can get further involved?
Thank you for that question. Excellent question. Yes, we, with the wonderful works of Robert, who is our village information officer and in charge of all those wonderful things and helping us, get this together. We do have your emails if you in the sign-up sheet. And when our next steps will to build this task force and then implement some of the things, the strategies that you said, like if we need youth ambassadors, if we need people who already have contacts in the school district to get in contact with them, to do tabling, to provide education, to provide trainings around this Vision Zero initiative. Yes, we will contact you any way that you would like to volunteer. Will be greatly appreciated. So we'll put down the next steps, send it out. We'll put down next steps, we'll send it out, and we'll always have it, whether through our village website or our village newsletter, but always look out for that. Pay attention to our meetings when we make announcements, because sometimes we do updates at the beginning of each regular session, every second and fourth Mondays, second and fourth Mondays, so we do updates there. So there's multiple ways that for you to do your own due diligence of paying attention, and then for us to relay that information out. Yes.
As a member of the Traffic Commission, I was unsure how this meeting would go. I just want to say my expectations far exceeded. So much was accomplished here, and I want to thank everyone for attending. And this is day one. We have a lot of work ahead of us, and it's a shared responsibility among police department, mayor and trustees, traffic commission, schools, a lot of people. It's a big job. We all have to do our job. That includes all residents, and I'm very happy to have been part of this. And we need to push forward and continue with this effort to make our streets safer.
And I would also like to say that the language access is really important in our community, so if we can all commit to spreading the word. I would love to thank Kevin Duarte, who is currently translating for this entire program, and he's been an amazing community leader, and he's making this language accessible. So if you know someone whose Spanish is their first language, please send them the link. It is all being translated. Thank you, Kevin.
But I think that's it. That's all she wrote, and or he or she or they or whatever. That's all they wrote. And you guys go forth and prosper. Say hello to your neighbors. Be mindful of each other and see each other. Please see each other.